Vandeham Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitang Tangsa Jivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Visakhan Vitangscha. So, we're continuing with Sri Sanatana Goswami's Brhad Bhagavatamrta, Part 2, Chapter 4, Vaikuntha Nama. So, Sri Gopakumara said, Bho Brahmana, being intoxicated by drinking the beauty of the transcendental Vraja Dham, I roamed about all alone. Nowhere else could I see such enchanting beauty. Therefore I lived long in those groves, and the enchantment thereof made me forget all the nations of embellishment of Vaikuntha that were referred to by the Parshada devotees of the Lord of Vaikuntha. Anyhow, in the course of my itinerary, I reached Sri Mathura Puri, and I could listen to the discourse on Srimad Bhagavatam and allied literature from the lips of the Mathura Brahmanas, loving devotees of Sri Krishna. And after learning from them through the ninefold devotional practice, I approached this Vrindavana. One day, to my good luck, I could meet my divine master here. He was brilliantly shining as the very grace embodiment. As soon as I fell in prostration at his feet, he graciously lifted me up with his blissful arms and most affectionately held me to his bosom, showering his unreserved grace. How lucky I am indeed that he, being an all-knower, could read my heart and accordingly disclosed unto me all the esoteric aspects of devotion. Being initiated into the most secret esoteric aspects of bhakti, and accordingly instructed by my divine master true to the perspective, I began to culture it. In a few days I was endowed with ecstatic enchantment of prema, and therefore I could not attend to my other rites, except madly chanting the divine name. And then there's a verse. Shri Krishna Gopala Hare Mukunda Govinda He Nanda Kishora Krishna Ha Sri Yashoda Tanaya Prasida Sri Vallavi Jivana Radhikesha. He Sri Krishna, He Hare, He Mukunda, He Govinda, He Nanda Kishora, He Krishna, He Sri Yashoda Nandana, He the very life of the loving devotees. Hey, the cupid lover of Sri Radhika, be gracious unto me. So saying, I sometimes I danced. Again, I cried aloud in pang, and at other times, forgetting myself totally, roamed about as a lunatic. One day, in such spiritual perturbation, I felt as if the lustrous, beloved Lord of my bosom was standing in front at a distance. I ran to him to embrace, but, love-laden as I was, soon fell into a trance. I could visualize then those Parshada devotees of Vaikuntha who made their advent before me and took me into their aeroplane to take me to Vaikuntha. At once I sat on it, the aeroplane, and could see all the worlds through which I was passing, but they had no comparison with my most enchanting Brajadhama. Anyhow, I could compose myself, noticing those Parshada devotees of the Lord who were my well-wishers and also known to me beforehand. As brilliantly the lustrous effulgence was emanating from their persons by dint of their spiritual stamina, so too the aeroplane was magnificently shining as if it was humiliating the brilliance of the sun and moon, etc. While I saluted them with due respect, they held me in their bosom and comforted me. They insisted upon me to have a celestial form, which they were ready to confer upon me. But I could not comply with their hundreds of suggestions. Yet I, being born at Govardhan, became as brilliantly shining as themselves, and also possessed all the transcendental characteristics. The path through which I was taken was divinely blissful, which cannot be adequately expressed through any earthly language. But on the way, the worlds I passed through, such as the heaven and those 8 shells around the universe, I felt ashamed to look upon them, because previously I aspired after those worlds, whereas now, endowed with prema bhakti, their wealth and beauty appeared before me most ephemeral and negligible. Therefore, coming to know my previous foolishness, I felt ashamed. Yet the gods, including Indra-deva, paid their homage to me, and others, folding their palms above their heads, made panegyric to me, and some others wished me by showering flowers and parched rice on my way. Many sang my glory. I passed through the worlds of mukti. That too had no appeal for me this time. Next, transcending those mukti worlds, I approached Sri Shiva Loka. Here I met Sri Shiva along with Sri Uma Devi, and with feeling of great joy I paid my obeisance to both of them. They both heartily welcomed me, showering their blessings. Next, finally, I approached the most glorious Vaikuntha, which is beyond the assessment of mind and speech. While still I was at the gate of Vaikuntha, the Parshada devotees told me, "Kindly halt here for a while. We shall be intimating the Lord about your arrival, and then on our return you may happily enter into his abode of divine bliss. In the meantime, with your devotionally operated eyes, you may witness many wonders of divine glow which were not heard of or noticed hereto before. And in your own tranquil heart you may observe the waves of blissful ocean-like glories emanating from this place of Vaikuntha." Sri Gopakumara further said, "While those Parshada devotees of the Lord entered into the Vaikuntha, I could notice, standing at the gate, someone else just entering into that divine world. Oh, what a wonder! He was riding on the wonderful plain, bedecked with the wealth of 100 Brahmandas, and absorbed in singing divine glories of the Lord. He was as brilliantly shining as the Lord himself, having the same effulgence of body, same age, dress, etc. I took him as the Lord himself, and accordingly addressed him, 'Oh, my Lord, O Saviour of myself!' And time and again I fell in prostration before him. But as soon as my words, 'Oh, my Lord,' entered into his ears, he, with all possible humility, closed his ear holes by putting his fingers into them, and signalled to me not to address him as such. He, muttering, 'I am a humble servant. I am a servant of the servants of my Lord,' entered into the Vaikuntha. Next, I saw someone else, still lustrously shining, approaching, and this time I thought it would not be a mistake to look upon him as my Lord himself, who might have resorted to fulfilling his Leela, and was now repairing to his abode. With such an understanding, I followed suit with his glorification and paying my prostrations. But he too closed his ear holes with his fingers, and requesting me not to say what went inside. not to say so, went inside. Still more wonderful events came to my sight. Still more people came on the way, some with a group, and they were more brilliantly shining than the previous ones. But I followed my procedure as before, but they too showed the same characteristics as those of the previous fellow personages. Some of them were holding golden umbrella, others chamara, and many other materials for the service of the Lord. Oh, many others, being intoxicated with drinking the succulence of bhakti, were madly running for going in. To speak the truth, each one of them was busy in culturing his respective devotional rites in the loving service of the Lord, and the lustrous effulgence that was emanating from their persons was proving the very characteristic of their selves. The beauty of their body actually should be the very treasure of aspiring souls. Ah, how they devoted all their senses to the loving seva of the Lord. They sang all the while the glories of the Lord. Ah, what thirsting souls they are for having the vision of the lotus feet of the Lord of Sri Lakshmi. They are indeed the embellishments of the world. Rahul is there. Oh, yes, I see. Some of them were approaching the Lord, accompanied by their associates, with their full pomp and grandeur. Some others left behind their family members and also their paraphernalia at the gateway and entered in alone. Ah, wonder of wonders! Some of them came with their members and with monarchical march full of pomp and gorgeous paraphernalia, but at their approach at the gate, they composed all of them within themselves. They made them all hide in their very persons by their yogic power, and as a humble self and completely absorbed in meditated impulse, just entered in. Oh, again, someone was frequently changing his form, and with the new form was shining more lustrously, which actually enthralled my mind. No doubt none of them was possessing the gross material body. Theirs was the transcendental embodiment, but some of them were in human form, others in monkey or deva or daitya or rishi. Some of them were looking as varnis or ashramis, so as sannyasi or otherwise. Again, many others were with their particular marks of initiation on their persons. Some of them were shining as the sun and the moon. Some of them were having 3 eyes, one with 4 heads, some with 4 hands, some having 1,000 hoods, and some with 8 hands. All these were expressing the warmth of their spiritual power. The secret behind it, which I learned pretty well, will be disclosed to you next, but it is a fact that when one enjoys the bliss of bhakti of Sri Krishna, what beauty and glory are not possessed by him? How can it be possible to measure the depth of the fathomless ocean of the transcendental characteristic of the Lord of Vaikuntha and of his transcendental abode, nay, even those inhabitants of that blissful world? Therefore, I must refrain from imposing upon them any earthly simile, although I know that you are a Mathura Brahmana culturing the prema bhakti of Mathura circle, and therefore the very embodiment of Vedic lore, and that you do your spiritual culture at a transcendental plane. Yet, as an aspirant, you are having at present both the spiritual as well as the mundane affairs. Therefore I took liberty, to a certain extent, in narrating these glories of Vaikuntha in consonance with some simile of the universe, or for making you understand the magnificence of Vaikuntha. But I beg pardon of Sri Hari if thereby I have made any offence at his feet. One thing to be known as certain is that all the inhabitants of Vaikuntha are equally endowed with divine characteristics, at the same time that each one of them is having variegated spiritual sentiment of his own. yet there rests no confusion or contamination. None of them is envious of others' expansion of majesty, whereas there remains ever the supreme blossom-heartedness, extreme humbleness in showing all possible honour to each other. Many such thousands of auspicious divine qualities are the eternal treasure of their selves. Through the naked eyes, those devotees of the Lord of Vaikuntha may appear as the engrossed selves, lusty after enjoyment, but everything about them is spiritual, and to speak the truth, even the most liberated persons, muktas, aspire after having the chance to serve their holy feet. Although they are perfectly abnegated and liberated, as the eternally free birds of the divine world, they take hold of different forms in their own persons and enact respective Leela with a view to enchantment of the Lord himself. Therefore, though they are same in depth of their spiritual love, yet every one has a speciality of his own. Accordingly, different objects of that Vaikuntha, the plains, have paraphernalia which is a speciality of their own. Sometimes it is so appeared as if everything there is gold or gems, and again, sometimes it so appears like the halo of 1,000 full moons. But true realization of that divine world may come only through the unreserved grace of the Lord of Vaikuntha. There is no other means to know it, because everything there is transcendental, so beyond the reach of mind or intellect. Without having spiritual vision, how is it possible for one to understand transcendentalism? It should be felt only in a tranquil heart. No doubt when it is narrated by a divine personage from his transcendental plane, it may come to the apprehension of an aspirant to a certain extent, with the prospect of spiritual amelioration. Therefore it rests with the blossoming state of the soul. If once the transcendental vision of the Vaikuntha comes to the purview of an aspirant, to him the bliss of Brahma realization becomes worthless, and she, Mukti, loses all her charms to him. Oh, what a glory! The self-realized Gyanis, who are tranquil due to desireless state of mind and have fully abnegated, even such souls, to their good luck when realizing the true characteristic of their selves, leaving aside their pragmatic Atmaramata, join with the Vaishnavas, the devotees of Bhagavan. In their accompaniment, they study the littleness of mukti, and observing the magnanimity of bhakti, take recourse to the transcendental culture of bhakti. I have personally observed it, as I observed the great spiritual glories of the devotees of the Lord of Vaikuntha. So I tried to gauge what would be the surpassing, fathomless glories and majesty of that great God. I became restless for the darshan of the Lord, and therefore lost my patience, and time and again I sat down and again stood up. In the meanwhile, those Parshada devotees of the Lord whom I had accompanied returned from inside and took me in along with them. Having entered into the Vaikuntha, what was it I visualized? Everything, wonder of wonders. What I perceived, even a God with 1,000 tongues in billions of years cannot exhaustively narrate. While I was approaching, the gatekeepers saluted me and forthwith intimated my arrival to the concerned authorities. Each one was paying due respect to the authority concerned. I too, on my way, honored them with salutation. Each one of them was like the very personification of the Lord himself. So I made my panegyrics to them. The most kind-hearted Parshada devotees of the Lord now taught me spiritual significance of the Srivatsa mark, that the Lord holds on his person, and how I should make my panegyric when I shall meet him. They told me how kind the Lord is towards his devotees, so I should not have the least doubt in his affection towards me, and that when I meet him I must owe due reverence towards him, as he is the Lord of majesty. I speedily passed through very many magnificent castles, and ultimately reached the most luminous of all captivating palatial monarchical mansion, which was so surpassingly magnificent that the wealth of all other worlds would not equal it, and nowhere else could such ornamental architectural view be found. Every architectural skill got its paramountship here. It is as brilliantly shining as a crore of suns, and beaming as a crore of moons. Maybe that too is not a proper comparison. It dazzles the eyes and incapacitates the mind to hold it. From a distance I could see that in the sanctum sanctorum of this castle there remains a most precious gem-set throne, which was covered with the softest snow-white quilt and pillow, as if the very moon was beaming on the snow bed. To my great luck I could see the great god of Sri Vaikunta, with his beaming youth, seated on the throne in half-lying posture, leaning towards his left and keeping the left armpit on the pillow. The person of the Lord was shining most brilliantly, like a cloud pouring grace, showering rains. How beautiful and fascinating! Bedecked with all precious gem-set ornaments on his person, a most beautiful garland, Vaijayanti, round the neck, and gorgeous garments on his person, tastefully decorated with sandalwood paste. The bliss beaming on his lips, ever fresh youthful beauty in his eyes, makara-shaped dazzling earrings swinging from his ears, kissing his cheeks, the curving coil of hair decorating the forehead. What grace showering beauty on his face, fully blossomed with all his effulgence transcendental, like autumnal moonbeams upon the blossoming lily. Clothed in yellowish garments of beauty parlour, and bedecked with gem-set bangle and bracelet, 4 graceful hands shine so majestically indeed. How brilliantly swings the Vaijayanti garland! How lustrous the Kaustuba mani on his breast, and conch-shaped Mukta mala round his neck! The very fathomless reservoir of paramount majesty! I bow unto him with awe and reverence. Further, I saw standing on his left the all-merciful grace embodiment Sri Lakshmi Devi, supplying betel nuts to the Lord, who pleasantly accepted them and chewed. Sri Bhudevi was also just standing in a servicing mode, with a water pot and a spittoon in her hand. The Lord was smiling so blissfully that his teeth were appearing like pomegranate seeds, and he was enchanting the devotees with blissful tidings. And many were the fanning chamara, and others putting on footwears on his feet, and still others looking after other various types of service to his supreme pleasure. Lord Shesha, Suparna, Vishwakshena, and other principal Parshada devotees were standing in front, singing eloquent panegyrics with folded palms. Sri Narada Rishi was singing the glories of the Lord, playing on his veena, and with stately dance, at which the Lord was expressing his delight by smilingly remarking about it to his consorts, Sri Lakshmi Devi, as well as to Sri Bhudevi. Sometimes He was stretching his legs towards a particular chosen devotee who was praying in his heart to attend to it. But what happened to me? I forgot the instructions of the Parshada devotees who advised me to stand with awe and reverence, and I addressed him thus: Hey Gopala, my beloved Krishna, hey, the stay of my life. So saying, I rushed towards him with my love-laden heart, just to hold him to my bosom. But suddenly the attendant Parshada devotees caught hold of me. I begged them with my utmost prayer to allow me to gain the satisfaction of my burning yearning, and soon, due to ecstatic rapture, I fell into a trance. The Parshada devotees showed pity upon me. They lifted me up, and with great labor they brought me back to my senses. But though composed, yet due to floods of tears from my eyes, I could not notice the Lord in my front. I removed my tears with my hands, and with an unquenched thirst I feasted my eyes upon the person of the Lord, when the very mercy embodiment, great God, showering his blessings, and smilingly addressed me, saying, Darling, be composed, come close to me. At such blissful utterance I entered into an ecstatic blissful world, and with spiritual perturbations began to dance, but the Parshada devotees of the Lord composed me with their utmost care. Mark, do you want to have a go from there?
Isn't it mind-boggling? I just remember sitting in Dhaka reading this for the first time and going into total bliss. I remember, God, what's it going to be like when he meets Vishnu eventually? It builds up the tension, and then he just goes, "My darling, come closer." Ah, it's so soft and it's so exquisite anyway. And I like it, he's rushing and they're all very formal. No, steady down, boy. My lord, it's just mind-boggling, isn't it?
Indeed, indeed it
I
is.
mean, who else? None of the other Sampradayas have this. They don't.
Oh, don't start that.
No, I know, but they don't. They don't.
Have you ever
Okay,
read
Mark,
Pilgrim's Progress?
that light is really bright. You've got to no more, no more. It's still that's it. Brilliant. Thank you
Thanks.
very much. No, no,
So
that's it.
you've got where we're up to, Mark?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to mute and disappear.
Okay,
Okay.
Hari Bol,
Hare
Jai
Krishna.
Kumara, Jai Mark,
Hare Krishna.
Hari Krishna.
Right. Shri Bhagavan most affectionately said, Bo, darling, come, come. Since long I was eagerly awaiting your presence here. Ray, friend, you have lost so many births. Never did you turn towards me. Coming to know that in this birth you would be attracted towards me. With this happiness I was feeling jubilant at heart like a child. Bo, brother, though I have been eager to meet you since long, yet I could not call on you by condescending myself, because you did not do any such rites remembering me on the verdict of Vedic Dharma. I could even make special case to bring you here earlier, even on the pretext of Namabasa, if you so did. I could send my Parshada devotees to bring you here in advance. There's a footnote. Though Bhagavan has got his unreserved grace for all the jivas, due to their aversion towards the Lord, endlessly in succession of births, suffer hallucinations after the enjoyment of the will of the wisp of Maya. The kindest father eagerly awaits to receive them back as his darling ones. Therefore, he has introduced Vedic Dharma for the jivas to get their spiritual awakening and to come back to the eternal abode of peace, viz. To him at Vaikuntha. Once again, he, observing that following the Vedic rites to come to him will be a long way for the jivas, finally out of his excessive kindness, he has condescended himself to that extent that even Namabasa would deliver a jiva and would bring him, the jiva, to him. Okay, so then... Continuing, darling, know it for certain that still observing you your aversion towards me, it is I who, out of my own kindness, even without looking after the code of Vedic rites, made you to be born at Sri Govardhan, the most chosen place of mine, and I myself condescended my advent as Jayanta to initiate you and become your spiritual master. Now you have made me quite free from anxiety, so kind is God. You may permanently stay over here, feeling the bliss thereof, and also to my delight. Sri Gopakumara said, Bo Mathura Brahmana, I become completely saturated with such showers of blessings of the most beloved Lord, and in that rapturous state I totally forgot my other rites, including my panegyric to him. But next I could see that a group of adolescent boys in their cowherd garments were playing on their flutes in front of the Lord, and they, with their natural friendship, welcomed me to join them and play on the flute. I had my flute, which I carried from Sri Govardhana, which had the sweetest tune. Particularly, I was expert in playing on it, having my inborn love for it. I, with the sweetest tune, enchanted the most connoisseur-like Lord Sri Madhava, along with associates, including Sri Lakshmi Devi, the grace embodiment. Now the Parsada devotees of the Lord, noticing that it was the time of repast for the Lord, went out of the chamber. Although I had no mind to be out of the sight of the Lord, yet, being through signs instructed by Sri Lakshmi Devi, they trickishly made me accompany them. Though all the glories, the vibhutis of Vaikuntha tried to puzzle me, and many of them begged me to accept them as my personal glories, yet not only did I bid them goodbye, but also I composed my own glories, which I possessed over, and as a humble Gopa Balaka, I stayed at Vaikuntha. At Vaikuntha, the transcendental glories ever brilliantly effuses with their full liberty. There is a wonderful characteristic in these glories, vibhutis, of Vaikuntha, that although the Parshadas may not cherish to possess them on their person, the devotees, even having such glories, ever show their humbleness. This is the wonderful, amusing pastime of Vaikuntha. Therefore, with all these, I could, by dint of my eternal spiritual nature, feel as a humble self, and got my delight in singing the glories of my God. I became certain in my mind that now, by the unreserved grace of God, I have possessed the summum bonum of life. Ah, what a perennial transcendental bliss saturates Vaikuntha. Mind and speech are incapable even to keep a note of it. This is the highest abode of transcendental peace, and the Lord of Vaikuntha is the supreme one without a second. Yet his kindness to Jivas is fathomless and so wonderful. How kind he is! He permitted me to render service by fanning chamara solemnly, and while I used to play on my flute, he most graciously looked upon me, at which I felt myself inundated into the ocean of bliss. Sometimes it so happened, due to my previous habit, I addressed the Lord saying, Bo Krishna, Bo Gopala, and delightfully sang Nama Sankirtana. I sang the glories and pastimes of Vraja Leela of Sri Krishna in front of the Lord of Vaikuntha, at which the devotees of Vaikuntha could not control their laughter. Therefore they took me out, and no doubt with unbiased affection told me. The devotees of Sri Vaikuntha said, Bo Gopala, our master is the Supreme Lord himself. How in his very presence can you address him, Hey Krishna, Hey Gopala? No, you should not do so. In view of his great glories, you should panegyrically sing his glories. After all, for punishing the wicked like Kamsa and protecting the innocent souls, our Lord condescended himself to be born as a Gopa, viz. Sri Krishna. This condescended Leela of our Lord may be glorified by a neophyte, but in the ripened state of devotion, when Vaikuntha is attained, such Leela of the Lord loses its charms. Therefore, we do not address our Lord as such. But there were some who contradicted the previous statement and remarked, it is absolutely not unjust to sing the Vraja Leela of our Lord. Nay, that is the thing to be done. And what a great mystery is hidden in his such Leela. None can unfold it. Again, the principal Parsada devotees, among them being wounded at heart, made them all silent and said, "How did you all so ignorantly throw such blasphemy on the divine Leela of our Lord, Sri Krishna? Our great God, out of his special unreserved grace for his single-minded devotees, Bhaktavatsalya, performed his glorious Sri Krishna Leela. Therefore, singing the glorious pastimes of Sri Krishna produces the greatest spiritual merit in the songs to a devotee, as well as it delights our master to a very great extent." Sri Gopakumara said, "I felt ashamed at the remarks of the earlier group for their ignorance. I was pleased to listen to the remarks of the principal devotees who spoke, but in the end, yet I could not be fully satisfied due to their various accounts, tantalizing the transcendental beatitude of Sri Krishna, my beloved. But now I felt quite helpless in heart for want of feeding my spiritual sentiment in the absence of the most beatific and supremely enchanting nectarine glories of the lotus feet of my beloved Sri Madana Gopal. As though reading my heart fully, the omniscient great God of Sri Vaikuntha, Sri Narayana, at once manifested himself before me as Sri Krishna, the eternal son of Nanda, and forthwith, with Sri Lakshmi Devi, became Sri Radhika, followed by Bhudevi as Chandravali. The attending Parisada devotees transformed themselves as several cowherd boys. In spite of such vision, I could not feel such a bliss as I had at Vraja, because the Vaikuntha environment was quite different from that of Vraja. On the contrary, I felt much perturbation. Sometimes the Lord, for my satisfaction, enacted Go Charana Leela of my Lord. And he went to the grove of Vaikuntha with cows and cowherds, putting on the garments of my beloved Sri Krishna. But again, sometimes he majestically sat on the throne as Narayana with Sri Lakshmi and others by his side, and also with all the paraphernalia. Therefore, I could not get rid of the projection of the majesty of the Lord, which naturally brought awe and reverence towards him in my heart, creating a hindrance of spontaneous flow of my natural love. Secondly, my awareness of the presence at Vaikuntha also put great restrictions on my sentiment. All these could not give free flow of my prema bhakti, and I felt a heavy weight in my heart. On the other hand, even by a little meditation of Sri Gopala Deva, what a bliss I used to have by his hearty embraces and kisses on my cheeks. But in the presence of the Lord of Vaikuntha, I could not fulfill my cherished desire, and hence my mind pained me very much. Sometime it so happened that the Lord of Vaikuntha, accompanied by his very close associates, left for some secret place, leaving us all in a pang of separation. At that state of perturbation, when I asked other devotees of the Lord, "Where has our Lord gone?" none of them replied clearly, as if the matter was a very secret one. But soon, when the Lord made his advent once again amidst us, the pangs of our heart vanished, and tides of bliss began to roll in our heart, as a jubilant ocean at the sight of the full moon. Although I was pining at heart the non-fulfillment of my yearning for the beatitude aspect of the Lord, yet, as per the equilibrium state of affairs of Vaikuntha, practically there was no place for the depressions. I have to confess that sometimes I felt some depression in my mind due to non-availability of the apple of my eye, the love of the Lord of Vraja. But the transcendental fullness of Vaikuntha naturally took all liberty to cure the deficiency in my heart. Re, my unsatiated heart, even after attaining Vaikuntha, you have the obstinacy to aim only for your cherished object. Is there no other supreme abode than this, Vaikuntha? What further inquiry do you want to have? Why should you cherish even the least doubt in this context? Therefore, ever ambitious mind, immediately put an end to all your doubts and console yourself that there is no abode superior to Vaikuntha, the attainment of which is the summum bonum of life. When I composed my mind with such arguments, I visualized my own transcendental form and lived in Vaikuntha itself in a wonderfully blissful state with my usual bhajan performances. I was spending my days in the experience of my spiritual ecstasies. But one day, during a solitude, I met Sri Narada Rishi. Sri Narada, the very embodiment of grace, the precious jewel among the devotees of the Lord, ever floating on the nectarine ocean of divine bliss, with the veena in his hand, bathed me in his boundless mercy by affectionately placing his merciful hand on my head and blessed me, so saying. Sri Narada said, Bo Gopalananda, Gopalanandana, the recipient of the chosen blessings of the Lord of Vaikuntha, from your face I may read out that you have some depression in your heart, though you are in Vaikuntha, where no want is left unfulfilled. How does come this melancholy in your mind? Tell me the reason. I'm very eager to know, because so far I have not come across anyone who felt so. Sri Gopakumara said, Sri Narada, being a friend of the destitutes and other self of my Guru Deva, I unreservedly opened my heart to him. After attentively listening to me, he breathed somewhat long sighs, and after ascertaining that there was no one else around, called me nearer and affectionately whispered into my ears. Sri Narada said in a whisper, as you have come to the conclusion as a result of your hundreds of reasonings that there is nothing superior to the attainment of Vaikuntha, I wholeheartedly subscribe to it. Yet, despite this paramount achievement, why are you not fully satisfied in not having your beloved to embrace and kiss you here, as generally you had in your modifying mind? I shall disclose the reason to you now. The enchanting beatific Leela of Lord Sri Krishna is all charming nectar and can be had only through loving devotion, prema bhakti. And that is the secret of all secrets. Even the rishis like us can hardly gain it. One will be blessed with it only by following the footsteps of the Vraja Gopis. There is no alternative to it. This beatific, transcendental premika Leela of Lord Sri Krishna is the most esoteric treasure preserved at a higher plane than Vaikuntha itself, and moves into the jubilant heart of the transparent, love-laden devotees of Vraja and their adherents. On the other hand, here in Vaikuntha, natural awe and reverence rule the heart of the devotees for the Lord of Majesty. Therefore, you cannot expect the beatific, sweet, enchanting Leela of the Lord in Vaikuntha. The highest majesty of the Lord got manifested in Vaikuntha. So how do you expect enchanting, beatific aspect of the divinity, the paramount, full-phased, transcendental manifestation, the secret of all secrets, to be manifested in Vaikuntha? Now you better keep your mind free for taking the Lord of Vaikuntha as your presiding deity and serve him. Don't keep other feelings. Then alone you will be able to feel the highest bliss of fulfillment of your cherished desire in Vaikuntha itself. Otherwise, Sri Gopakumara said, after hearing the most precious gem-like secret of the Vaishnava theology, my ears become more thirsty to hear the nectarine esoteric aspect of the Lord from the holy lips of Sri Narada. But out of respect to him, I felt shy to open my mouth, yet he, being an all-knower and omniscient, could know what was in my heart. He, the crest-jewel devotee of the Lord, then spoke for sweetening my ears, as well as for the enjoyment of his tongue. Sri Narada said, Bo Gopakumara, please don't equate the animals, birds, trees, creepers, etc., which you find here at Vaikuntha with the gross phenomenal materials. For all of them are eternal servitors of Sri Narayana in the garb of animals or birds, etc. And they enjoy the blissful servitorship of the Lord. All of them are transcendental in character. The devotees of Vaikuntha, according to their affinity for a specific aspect of the majesty of Narayana and his incarnations get their respective Sarupya Mukti. Thus, some may take human form or devata, rishi, or even fish or tortoise. Likewise, those who worship Varaha incarnation may get a Varaha Swarupya in Vaikuntha. Worshippers of Narasimha incarnation may accept Narasimha Sarupya, and worshippers of Vamana Deva will attain Vamana Sarupya. Those who subscribe to gods such as the one with 3 eyes, the one with 4 faces, Lord of 1,000 eyes, and even the sun god, moon god, Vayudeva, Agni Deva, may obtain similar forms with their respective paraphernalia and may live in their respective worlds too. When a sincere aspirant, in lieu of the ripened fruits of his spiritual virtues, meets with the end of his cycle of births and deaths, and when he journeys to Vaikuntha, his mundane body drops down, and having gained his spiritual body, which is an exact replica of the mundane body through which he had attained perfection of his sadhana eternally, he renders service to the Lord of Vaikuntha. They observe in the person of Sri Narayana the very manifestation of their respective tutelary deity. They carry out their devotional performances in Vaikuntha similar to their sadhanas, with their purely spiritual senses, but with greater vigor. Those devotees of respective incarnations of the Lord Narayana get the full liberty to serve with their self-contentment the same manifestation of their respective deity, with a view to rendering unalloyed and natural service in their similar form as hereto before, that is the mark of their single-minded devotion, such as Hanuman eternally serves Sri Ramachandra. Here, monkey form of Hanuman is not a material product. Here, the spiritual monkey form of Hanuman is similar to his sadhaka body at Vaikuntha. In no way there is inferiority complexion with a human form. Likewise, one must know that all the servitors of Vaikuntha, whether having human or animal form, or seemingly inert beings such as creepers, etc., are transcendental in character. There are different chambers within the Vaikuntha, and in respective chamber, a particular devotee makes himself engaged in the service of tutelary manifestation of Sri Narayana, and there itself they find their fullness. But those devotional favor towards the different manifestations of Sri Narayana, they get liberty to move about in different chambers and render their service to such manifestations. Those who are initiated with 8-lettered divine mantram, they, after coming to Vaikuntha, eternally serve Sri Narayana with his consort Sri Lakshmi Devi. Among the different groups of devotees of Vaikuntha, no doubt everyone enjoys bliss in respect to his amount of service, which is full in itself, but definitely there are grades of their spiritual sentiment as per the degree of availability of service. As this, Bhagavan Sri Narayana makes the earth most blessed by presenting him as Sri Jagannatha or many such other presiding Sri Murtis. Accordingly, time to time, he made his revelations as Narayana, Dattatreya, Parashurama, Kapila, who are the very spiritual crown of the goddess earth. Likewise, in the heaven, Sri Vishnu and Yajneshwara, all, as well as those of Matsya, Kurma, Mahavaraha, Sri Narasimha Deva, Vamana Deva, etc., they are eternally existing with their eternal Nama, Rupa, Guna, and Parikara. Though they are separately existing, but all of them are transcendental and one and the same. These different manifestations of Bhagavan Sri Narayana are not to be understood like different types of jivas, whereas they are essentially one and the same. Vaibhava aspects of the same divinity, they all are of essential power, Swarupa Shakti, of Bhagavan, and therefore they must not be mistaken by comparing them as such jivas. To the fulfillment of the cherished spiritual sentiment of the respective devotees, the Lord makes his particular manifestations. Again, they must not be understood like the reflection of the sun into different waterfall pots, whereas each one of them maintains his special characteristics eternally at the same time, although ontologically one and the same. But in certain respect, it may be compared with the same sun, who is in a varied mood characteristically looked upon by the different observers as per their angle of vision and station on longitudinal lines. So too Kame Bhagavan is observed in his different manifestations as per the devotee's standpoint of view, as the culturing jnana and the bliss thereof are definitely different, yet Brahmagyanis consider both as one. Likewise, the different incarnations are eternally spiritual truths, yet ontologically they are one and the same, though morphologically they maintain their eternal separable existence. In the spiritual vision of a devotee, different aspects of Sri Krishna may appear to the devotee's purview. Different sportive land of the Lord may come, or one may stand at the particular grove to meet the beloved Lord, or a particular Parshada devotee is stationed to a particular place with a particular eternal service, such as Garuda, Sri Shesha. They all live at the world of transcendence, as well as their service is full in itself, so much as God is pleased thereby. At any rate, there is no superior or inferior complexion. The same Lord Sri Krishna of Vaikuntha, the land of transcendence, eternally remains in his different manifestations at different holy places, such as Badridham, Sri Kshetra Dham, the sole blissful pleasure of his single-minded devotees. This truth was observed by Brahma after he took away by his Mayic Shakti the cattle of Sri Krishna, the killer of Aghasura in Vraja. Viz. He, Brahma, kept all the cattle hidden in the caves, and after a complete year, when he came to meet Sri Krishna, he was surprised to see the same number of cattle and cowherd boys produced by Sri Krishna from his person. But next, by the unreserved grace of Sri Krishna, he could realize that although all of them were in their respective forms and nature, yet they were the very personification of Sri Krishna himself. Accordingly, I myself, Sri Narada, when roamed about different chambers of Dwaraka, I could see the same Sri Krishna enacting his Leela with thousands of queens in a quite different way from one to another, at one and the same time. This is known as Prabhava Leela of Bhagavan Sri Krishna. These Prabhava and Vaibhava Leela of Bhagavan are conducted by the Yoga Maya, the supralogical essential Shakti of Bhagavan himself. Therefore, distinction and non-distinction of such variegated Leelas of Bhagavan Sri Krishna and mystery thereof is beyond human reason. Yet, by the unreserved grace of him, Sri Krishna, to the single-minded devotees, its mystery is unfolded. In his Dwarka Leela, thousands of his queens served their husband Sri Krishna several varieties of delicious repasts, and Sri Krishna accepted all of them at their respective chambers at one and the same time, to the sole delight of each queen, who felt that the beloved showed special favor to her in accepting her offerings first. Such was the feeling of each one of the queens. Sometimes he makes his revelation in a specially gifted jiva, which is known as Avesha avatar. The wise knows it as real as God himself, and therefore such incarnations also were looked after as the very manifestations of God, such as Sri Vyasadeva, the propeller of religious literature. As we have learnt, Sri Krishna takes many incarnations with his different aspects. Accordingly, his eternal consort Sri Mahalakshmi, the very transcendent predominated aspect of the Lord, also takes her number of manifestations. Sri Mahalakshmi ever rests at the core of the Lord's breast in rendering her spontaneous service to the sole delight of the Lord, and accordingly her own other manifestations in according with their chastity of love towards the principal deity Sri Krishna. They stay along with different Vishnus, who all are the different aspects of Sri Krishna. Sri Lakshmi Devi is the goddess of all the wealths, and some of her representatives are the goddesses of all vibhutis too, occult powers. But the devotees, nay, even mumukshus and muktas too, do not worship her, such representatives, as generally they bestow upon their worshippers occult power, such as anima, power of assuming an extremely or almost invisible form and move everywhere, lagima, power of making the body subtle at pleasure, etc. They are not to be worshipped by elevated souls. Again, some of her representatives are irresolute. Better than them are neophyte devotees dear to the Lord. Anyhow, by the by, you must know that Sri Bhudevi is also as dear as Sri Mahalakshmi to the Lord. And Sri Yogamaya is the essential and supra-logical power of the Lord, and having the same transcendental characteristic. The Swarupa Shakti of Bhagavan in some places known as Mahavibhuti, and in some other places as Yogamaya, etc. The Swarupa Shakti of Bhagavan creates the eternal and spontaneous, ever-new, sportive Vaibhava and Vilasa Leela of the Lord, which are but transcendental, spiritually eternal truth, all-pervasive and beginningless. This is unthinkable. He is ever manifest, but again takes his birth. He is full in himself, but he wants something from his devotees. He is one, but becomes many at Rasa Krida, or at the chambers of his queens of Dwaraka, with his individual characteristic in each place likewise. Yogamaya does all these for his eternal and spontaneous pleasure. Madanji, can you please continue?
That was beautiful, Mark. Thank you. That was so lovely.
Yeah, really great, isn't it?
Beautiful, beautiful.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll go on a bit. Accordingly, this is Narada speaking to Gopakumar, right? Accordingly, any aspect of his Swarup Shakti creates wonderful charms and ever fresh, eternal, blissful thoughts, which enchants an unalloyed devotee in maddeningly singing his glories with ecstatic dance. His Yoga Maya makes his different incarnations in his age, dress, ornaments, and sports, and are eternal, yet all the while are modified by the act of Yoga Maya to the sole pleasure of the Lord himself, as well as of his devotees. All these leelas are taking place in the transcendental plane, which are beyond the purview and apprehension of non-devotees. The performance of Shravana Kirtana and other phases of transcendental processes of bhakti by the devotees are in lieu of the condescending grace of Yoga Maya only, and the very Vaikuntha Dhamma, including dhammas like Vraja, Dwarka, etc., various aspects of Bhagavat Leela, their every act of devotee for the sole pleasure of Bhagavan are by dint of Yoga Maya's influence and intention. Although her acts are mysterious and beyond anybody's apprehension, but she unfolds all the secrets to the realization of the unalloyed devotees. Sri Bhagavan is the possessor of all powers, which are generally characterized as para, essential power, and apara, mundane power. Shakti, of which para Shakti is the eternal integral energy of the Lord, therefore beyond speech and mind. This Shakti sometimes in certain Puranas are referred to as Prakriti. Again, due to different functions, this Prakriti, Parashakti, has got several aspects of her own. But Aparashakti has got 3 gunas, mundane, with sattva, rajas and tamas. Therefore she is also known as Trigunatmika. And this Aparashakti is the shadow, reflection of the Parashakti. This Aparashakti, being empowered by the Lord, gives birth to this mundane world, which is elusive and the very root of nescience of the jivas, and very, very scrupulous. She is the very cause of jiva's suffering from his very beginning. When jiva gets its self-realization, she disappears. Therefore, she is non-eternal, at the same time being the shadow reflection of eternal Swarupa Shakti, Parashakti of Bhagavan. Her causative aspect ever remains, whereas the effective aspect is lost. Therefore, she is also beginningless as well as endless. This Aparashakti is also known as Mahamaya, and she is the goddess of the eightfold shells of the universe, but the primeval and deficient cause is empowered to her by the Swarup Shakti, for which she is also known as Prakriti. This this universe is elusive, like a spell of an alchemist. One who can get rid of her illusion becomes mukta and possesses unalloyed devotion to Bhagavan. Whereas the Parashakti of Sri Krishna produces only eternal and ever-existing existent entities, such as Rishi Kardama and others, when were provided with divine plane, etc., by Yogamaya, they are all real. The great yogis constantly meditate upon the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, who is the very aspired object of tapasya, etc., and all auspicious karma may be the very reward thereof. Therefore, his Parashakti, whatever she produces, naturally becomes spiritually true and eternally existent. Sri Krishna, being the fountain source from whom the incarnations are incarnated, as he is transcendent, therefore all the incarnations that have come from him are ontologically identical and spiritually true as well as eternal. Though his incarnations are identical, yet Sri Krishna is the fountain source, the very origin of all origins, and he is the collective whole, i.e., in his person all the avatars rest. On this account, he is properly known as Swayam Bhagavan, viz., the Supreme God himself par excellence. And all glory to him alone. His glories are surpassing and exceptionally great that all other gods, including his own incarnations, Sri Narayana of Vaikuntha, no doubt, is having the highest bhagas, majesty, might, glory, wisdom, beauty, and supremacy, with their fullest extent. But to speak the truth, Sri Krishna's bhagas, viz., these qualities, are still and all fascinating benevolence. Real paramountship of everything takes place only in the fascinating, beatific Madhurya Leela of Sri Krishna. Therefore, Sri Krishna, the Lord of love, transcendent, shines above all. The sweet-hearted devotees, premika bhaktas, in whose hearts swings the fascinating, beatific Madhurya Leela of the Lord Sri Krishna, they alone can realize such finest super excellency of Sri Krishna's Leela, Madhurya, Guna Madhurya, Rupa Madhurya, and Venu Madhurya. No doubt, those who worship other manifestations of Sri Krishna as per their spiritual sentiment concentrate their devotion respectively and feel themselves fully blessed. As per the degree of spiritual sentiment, they avail themselves the liberty of servitorship and accordingly are rewarded therefore. They never feel displeasure in their hearts. why different devotees have different types of spiritual sentiment, nobody can give a proper reason thereof. Lord Sri Krishna has fathomless ocean-like crores and crores of mysterious leelas and innumerable aspects of himself to preside over the hearts of the devotees in accordance with their respective spiritual sentiments and make them relish in respect of their sweet taste. The majesty thereof is beyond any reasoning. The mystery thereof is beyond any reasoning. In accordance with the sentiment, ruchi, of the respective devotees, Sri Krishna represents himself as their tutelary beloved. But one thing, though there are different degrees of spiritual sentiment, and every one may have a special type of devotional rite of rendering service to him, yet these remain among themselves without any impudence or any audacity or malice. To their full liberty, everyone does his service and feels gratified. But one thing, the devotee's heart is so full and large that neither he is like an engrossed self who is at the ephemeral pleasure of the world, feels his cup is full, nor feels his cup is full, nor like an abnegated jnani who meets an end of his happiness at the negligible bliss of moksha, whereas these are not at all any real bliss to them, as it were. The devotees of Sri Krishna, in lieu of their transcendental characteristic, ever are inundated into the fathomless ocean of transcendental bliss in loving service of the Lord. Therefore, no narrow bigotry or selfish love like celestial, mundane, or Brahma Nirvana bliss, will-o'-the-wisp, can eclipse their brilliantly effulgent heart. As per the depth of the loving sentiment of respective devotee, different spiritual bhavas, succulent feelings, take birth into the heart of the devotee, and the respective devotee's succulence of feeling of love gets its high tide or slow ebb in consonance with and non-agreement facets. Bho Gopakumara! Among the devotees of Vaikuntha, some are eternal Parshada devotees like Shesha, Garuda, etc., and others sadhana siddha, viz. Certain jivas of bondage, having grace from Sri Krishna, and forthwith, by dint of their sincere sadhana, got themselves released from worldliness and came to Vaikuntha. No doubt all of them are spiritual embodiments, but there are distinctions of their serving benevolent disposition, as some of them attend in his close chambers, whereas some others are engaged in ancillary causes. Again, some may have a doubt that it may be agreeable that there may rest distinction of spiritual sentiment in between eternal Parshada devotees and the Baddha Mukta Jivas, but how it can be reconciled among the eternal Parshada devotees, since there is distinction through all of them, though all of them are spiritually perfect in themselves. As they are eternally existent Vaikuntha, naturally they should be equated in all respects with Sri Narayana himself, but one must not forget that at the same time they are eternally characterized as the servitors, whereas Bhagavan is the only served master. This is the transcendental spiritual truth. Sri Bhagavan, as well as the eternal Parshada devotees, are transcendental Satchidananda. In this respect, both are the same, whereas Sri Krishna is an ocean of nectarine bliss, and the devotees are like bees and naturally are attracted due to some unknown thirst and greed in their maddening love to drink and taste with intoxication the nectar from the lotus feet of Bhagavan Sri Krishna, the all-attractor. Although ontologically, in transcendental characteristic, the other manifestations of Sri Krishna are equated with him, who is Bhagavan par excellence, His characteristic super excellent glories shine above all, as it were, like brilliant full moon amidst the stars, when it is quite natural for Sri Krishna to maintain special features of his own than his own manifested other selves. Likewise, there ever remains distinctive potency of overlordship of Bhagavan as served God, whereas his Parshada devotees characteristically possess potency of servitorship. Some opine, the very beatific, transcendental, all-attracting, characteristic Madhurya of Sri Krishna itself is sufficient to establish the super-excellency of his paramount supremacy as Bhagavan par excellence. Accordingly, his Parshada devotees are the very essence of Brahman, viz. So blissful. Those devotees of Sri Krishna, in accordance with their loving devotional fervor, take their spiritual form and eternally get themselves dovetailed in the loving service of the beloved Master, with the unquenching, thirsty feeling of their spiritual sentiment. Sri Gopakumara said, "Bho, Bhagavan Sri Narada, kindly tell me whether all the Sri Murtis of Bhagavan," I'm just looking to see how far it's got to go, whether all the Sri Murtis of Bhagavan Sri Krishna existing on the earth are having the same transcendental characteristic as Sri Jagannatha Deva, the presiding deity of Sri Nilachala, Purushottama Kshetra, Puri. In response to my question, Sri Narada said, all the Sri Murtis of Bhagavan Vishnu are transcendental Satchidananda in characteristic. The same most gracious God made his personal representation in those deities, and himself presides over the respective spiritual holiness of the places for showering his grace to those aspirants, as well as to feed the spiritual sentiment of his devotees, who all want him to be in that particular manifestation with full of Puranic episodes. Next I asked him, if so, then why not, leaving aside all other practices, karma, jnana, yoga, tapas, etc., better one should solely devote himself to the worship of such Sri Murti alone. It is also justified that by worshipping the Sri Murti of the God, one is endowed with great spiritual gain. Bo Bhagavan, I find there some contradiction referred to in some of the Mahapuranas, which cannot be also neglected or overlooked, as they are the holy utterances of very great ones. Listening to my such utterances, Sri Narada Rishi, who is the very principal spiritual guru for guiding the people towards the spiritual path of worshipping the Sri Murti of Bhagavan Sri Vishnu Krishna, got up and most affectionately held me into his bosom for some time, and then with his bliss-showering tongue spoke. Sri Narada said, I have already told you about the Sri Murti, who is the very God himself. Now what have I to say about the spiritual merit of it? Nay, even those who, without giving much heed upon the Varna and Ashrama Dharma, while initiate themselves in serving Sri Murti with a concrete faith and spiritual outlook that the Sri Murti is the very God himself, let it be whether that Sri Murti is ancient or one very recently discovered, one even installed by themselves, such persons will not be outwitted from the society, and not to be considered as having transgressed the code of Swadharma, but really they thereby accumulate greater spiritual merit, because devotion to Sri Krishna Vishnu is the very human pursuit, and seva to Sri Murti is a principal factor thereof. Oh, what a glory of Sri Murti Seva, of Sri Bhagavan Sri Krishna, that if one duly honors even a trina herb here, a tulsi leaf offered at the feet of the Sri Murti is the very favorite object of the god, then one easily gains the desired object. And if transcendental divine Krishna Nama, heard of even for once, or accordingly comes out from the mouth, one attains still further gain beyond the people's worldly ambiguous desired object. Now, consider how meritorious it would be when one with deep spiritual faith worships the Sri Murti in accordance with the recitation of Vedic mantras. Fie unto him who considers worship Sri Murti a blasphemy. Ah, the devotees get their liberty to exercise the fervour of devotion by observing all the devotional rites having the Sri Murti at the sanctum sanctorum. Those who worship Sri Murti of Sri Krishna with spiritual outlook never dishonour a devotee of God. But sometimes sadhakas, while engaged in most attentively at the puja of the Sri Murti, may not at that time give attention to welcome an honoured chancely guest devotee. In such a case, it will not be considered dishonour at all. On the contrary, observing his devotion to Sri Murti Seva, the chancely approached devotee feels proud to praise him. Whereas fie unto them who look upon Sri Murti as per the product of materials such as stone, clay made, wood, etc., and worship Sri Murti as an emblem of God. Such persons do blasphemy to the deity. Therefore, out and out, they are discarded in the Puranas. Such pseudo-worshippers only never honour a devotee of Sri Hari. Nay, they, due to their vanity, give respect to none, nor are sympathetic to any creature, and so egoistic they are that they give no heed to the Vedic sayings that the deity of Sri Hari is identical with God himself. One who looks otherwise is a Pashandi, atheist, and punishable by the god of death. Do you want to have the last go, Mark? We could finish the chapter. We could finish it off.
Okay.
Very good.
I'm going to try and get there. It is. Got it. Okay. Hare Krishna.
Mark, you're just a little bit off.
Sorry.
That's it. Thank you. But the nap, that's it. Perfect.
Okay.
Carry on.
Hare Krishna. They are the worst. They are the worst blemished among the devotees. Their wisdom is eclipsed, and never they are rewarded with the fruits of Srimurti worship, that so ever may be their pomp and grandeur of their so-called worship. There's a rather large footnote here. I'll read it out because it's so big it must be important. As it is said by Sri Prahlad Maharaj in Bhagavatam 7:9-11, that this all-merciful Lord, who is seated with his own blissful nature, does not accept any offering or puja from the hands of those who are quite ignorant of his spiritual self in the form of a deity. But he accepts the offerings of his single-minded devotees to favor them with blessedness, like the decoration of one's face is reflected from its image in a mirror, which cannot be decorated otherwise. Again, Sri Kapila Dev says to Devahuti, "Bo, mother, I am not pleased, even though my image is adored by means of formal worship carried with costly materials by a man who slights other creatures." In the Gita, Sri Bhagavan has said, "Even a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or drop of water is offered to me with loving devotion, is readily enjoyed by me as the most covetable gifts of love of my devotees. But only condition is that he should be prayata atmana, viz. Absolutely pure and having loving devotion." Our Lord declined the invitation of Duryodhana, who had made elaborate preparations to feed him, but he called on Vidura and fondly partook most simple food, saying, "It is your love that brought me here. I relish the loving devotion of yours." Our beloved Lord voraciously ate up the parched rice from Sudama, saying, "O friend, this loving presence brought by you affords me supreme delight." So it shows that whatever done with loving devotion is accepted by the affectionate Lord in the form of Sri Murti. And as is the worship, so is the fruit. But foolish people, subdued by their egotism, perform the Vedic sacrifices, or if at all, they seek any knowledge, the wicked theory of impersonal Brahman, thinking that God has no form. Again, imagine a false form for worship in a deity which is to them inferior and maic, thereby resulting in the divine nature of their real self being completely unwrapped. Therefore, in conclusion, we find arrogance without having real spiritual faith in Sri Murti worship offer it just for celestial gain, or if at all they seek any knowledge of that impersonal Brahman. Both are idolaters and certainly do worst blasphemy upon Sri Murti worship. But there are two other groups, viz. One, those who do worship to the Sri Murti with spiritual faith, viz. Sri Murti is the very God himself, and render their devotional service as per Shastric rites, whereas do not show so much respect to his devotees, or accordingly look to the spiritual welfare of other fellow beings, are known as ordinary devotees, but gradually by the kind and favour of the Sri Murti, they in due course will become the best among the devotees. Two, secondly, the top class Parama Bhagavata devotees visualize their beloved God in the very person of the Sri Murti. And with their rapturous, loving devotion, they talk and feed with puddings the Sri Murti and adore with their choicest belongings. Such anecdotes abound in our religious literature. Although those ignorants do blasphemy to the Sri Murti worship, yet they too are rewarded, as even such worship is far superior to fruitive virtuous karma, but they cannot come to the gate of the kingdom of devotion. The devotee worships with his devotional fervour the Sri Murti. He is endowed with prema, whereas such pseudo-worshippers' gain is tantalizing. Therefore, sincere devotees of Bhagavan condemn such blasphemous Sri Murti worship. The Puranas also echo with such discarding remarks about the idolatrous approach. Those pseudoists are absolutely against transcendental Sri Murti worship of the devotees. Even if such a pseudoist continues to worship, ultimately he may get wisdom and purification of his heart, being endowed with the blessings of some chancely approach of guest devotee. The great devotees of Sri Bhagavan are always kind to such devotees. They go on wandering for sanctifying, so on their approach a pseudoist may luckily give response to their advice, and accordingly being purified by the enlightenment, if he comes to the right track, then in due course he will become a pure devotee. As some devotees may have certain desire while worshipping the Sri Murti, in such case he may be getting the desired object in its fulfillment, and immediately he may not get pure sentiment of devotion. But it is the fact that the spiritual influence of Sri Murti worship of Bhagavan Vishnu Krishna is such that ultimately he will be also rewarded with the pure devotion of love, when no other desire will remain in his heart save and except service to God for his satisfaction alone. Here also one may find that the single-minded great devotees of God even discard such desire-filled worship, which is to be understood as not condemning the Sri Murti worship, but to condemn such selfish desires of the worshipper aspirant. Because the pure single-minded devotees of Bhagavan Sri Krishna know that the real purpose of devotion is to yearn for tending the lotus feet of Bhagavan and be inundated into the blissful ocean-like sportive leela of him and nothing else. Those pure devotees feel out of sight of God, even for a moment, is void of their life, and accordingly Sri Bhagavan, even for a moment, does not leave them. So all the celestial gains or even moksha can easily be obtained, but Bhagavan never bestows so easily pure devotion to one. It is the fact that being endowed with loving devotion, a single-minded devotee makes the God infatuated to him, as if on that account the Supreme Beloved Lord does not bestow bhakti upon one so easily. On the contrary, one must not consider the beloved and all-merciful God as biased one, or as partial for or prejudiced against anyone. The divine nature of God is always immutable and always merciful, irrespective of one's approach towards him. But as the sun, though shedding its light equally, yet casts its reflection only on transparent objects and not opaque things, so it is the devotees who constantly dwell on him with chanting divine names, glories, pastimes, and worshipping by offering all their belongings. The devotees' love make him to enshrine them in his heart, as also to stand revealed himself in their hearts. Just as a devotee loves God, God too loves his devotee. Bhakta Vatsalya is a very special characteristic in the very Swarup Shakti of Bhagavan for his Bhakta. This special favor of Bhagavan to his Bhakta is the crest jewel among all his auspicious transcendental gunas. Particularly Paramore lover Sri Krishna may readily give up his own Atmaramata and even his own promise, but never can abandon his devotees. Nay, he ever enshrines them in his heart. Bhagavan says, I am Bhakta Paradina, viz. I surrender entirely myself at the will of my single-minded devotee. This Bhakta Paradinata is the highest shining glory of all the auspicious divine qualities of God. Again, when Prema Bhakti reaches to its highest stage, at that time God plays a hide and seek with the devotees, and therefore sometimes devotees feel pang of separation when an unimaginable bliss floods their heart, which is the highest testimony of feeling of transcendental bliss, as it were. It is the very crown of Bhakti Devi. So say the Parama Bhagavatas. At the pang of separation, a premic devotee outwardly feels a burning sensation, but in his heart, a perennial flow of nectarine bliss he feels, like drinking hot sugarcane juice. It burns the tongue, but too sweet to drink. Yet, this outer suffering of the devotee, the beloved God cannot tolerate, and soon he makes himself enshrined into his heart. So butter-like soft his feeling is. But people without sufficient spiritual foresight misconstrue such pang of suffering of a premika devotee of the Lord, and sometimes they laugh at such devotees, and ever they make themselves deprived of the choicest gift of the beloved God, who is although kind to all. To attain the happiness of heaven is not a laborious task, but to be bestowed with prema bhakti is beyond all endeavor. In this respect, an example may be given that prema bhakti is the philosopher's stone, chintamani, whereas heavenly happiness and the bliss of mukti are a piece of glass and a mount of gold, respectively. Glass and gold can be hauled, but philosopher's stone cannot be even dreamt of. Prema Bhakti is the most precious gem and the most hidden treasure of God, Sri Krishna, and only the most fortunate person who is beyond worldliness and who becomes restless by hankering for nothing but prema alone, that too very, very rarely, Sri Krishna may bestow upon him the Prema Bhakti. Ah, nay, we, the crest jewel devotees of the Lord Sri Krishna, even cannot fully characterize the nature of Prema Bhakti. If at all we try to illustrate Prema Bhakti by bustling examples, even that too, instead of giving any clear understanding, may hide the brilliancy of it. That is why the dearest premic devotee of the beloved Lord did not elaborate it, even in the most authoritative Bhakti literature, because one, without having sufficient foresight in this cult of Prema Bhakti, may make blasphemy upon it. The transcendental characteristic excellence and beatific benevolence of Prema Bhakti is known to none else except to a premic devotee. And I do consider you, being spiritually born at transcendental land of Vraja, and also being initiated by a Premika devotee, you too, by the unreserved grace of Sri Krishna, sooner will be endowed with that most covetous succulence of Prema Bhakti. Sri Gopakumara said, on listening to the nectar-pouring tidings from the holy lips of Sri Narada Rishi, my thirst for darshan of the Lord, the lotus feet of my beloved Sri Gopaladeva grew extremely, and I became restless for his darshana. Actually, I felt myself, as it were, fish out of water, and my feelings could be read out by that great Narada Rishi. So he promptly spoke to my consolation that Sri Narada said, although it is not proper to disclose such hidden secret at this Vaikuntha, yet observing your agony, I am compelled to narrate about it. Just at a very short distance from this place there remains Ayodhya Puri, where Sri Raghupati Sri Ramachandra is the presiding god, and still beyond it there exists Dwaravati Puri, which is almost the same as Sri Mathura Puri. As you are a favorite to Sri Yadupati, Sri Krishna, as the master of the Yadavas at Dwaraka, so better you should approach Dwaraka and feast your eyes by having darshana of your beloved Sri Krishna there. Anyhow, first you should know from me the proper method of approaching Ayodhya. This is no doubt the philosophy of single-minded devotee of Sri Ramachandra only. Although it is the spiritual fact that by having loving devotion to Avatari Sri Krishna, the supreme par excellence, and the very fountain source of all incarnations, and the highest object of the soul's pursuit, viz. The summum bonum of life, yet just I am telling the following in accordance with the spiritual sentiment of the single-minded devotees of the lotus feet of Sri Ramachandra, that while you approach Ayodhya, you should say, Bo Sitapati, Bo Raghunath, Bo Lakshmana Jyeshta, Bo Prabhu, Bo the beloved Lord of Hanuman, Sri Hanuman, and also sing the glories of Sri Ramachandra depicting his Leela, Rupa, Guna, and glorious pastimes that are generally recorded in the Holy Scriptures. Needless to instruct you much, as you already know that one should act in accordance with the great pleasure to one's master, and that act is creditable, by which one gets a better chance to serve the master. The devotees feel proud to do any service by which the beloved master is pleased. Next, after having approached the lotus feet of Sri Ramachandra, if you find that your yearning for darshan of your beloved Sri Madan Gopal is not saturated, then Sri Ramachandra, whose heart is so soft like butter, himself will definitely lead you happily to Dwaraka. And since all these past, for whom your thirsty soul has been longing for, on your arrival at Dwaraka, you shall feast your blessed eyes with the happiest darshana of Sri Krishna along with the Yadavas. That Sri Krishna is the very enshrined object of your elevated soul, but only through Namasankirtan alone this Dwaraka is attained. Anyhow, it is also to be known that Ayodhya and Dwaraka, etc., are existent within the jurisdiction of Vaikuntha. Therefore, there is no need for you now to approach the Lord of Vaikuntha to take his permission again to speak the truth, that I have come to you only on the command of Sri Narayana, the Lord of Vaikuntha, who is also the monitor and observer of all souls. So without any contradiction, do accept my advice as the very verdict of the Lord. Secondly, at present, the Lord has left Vaikuntha for elsewhere to grace some of his ardent devotees in person, and it may be delayed for his return. And how long, none knows. Your agony definitely will not pursue you. Await long, therefore. This is the opportune time for you to start without any loss of time. Sri Gopakumara said. After having such direction from Sri Narada Rishi, with great delight, I fell in prostration before him time and again, and with his blessings, and in accordance with his advice, I started my journey. From a distance from Ayodhya, I could see that the restless monkeys, devotees of Sri Ramachandra, were chanting Rama Nama, and were jumping hither and thither joyfully. Soon I approached them. They took hold of my flute, which I was all the while holding in my hand. And then, along with them, I entered into Ayodhya, where to my wonder, I could see the people more handsome than the Parishada devotees of the Lord of Vaikuntha. The Parishada devotees of Vaikuntha are of Sarupya, viz. Having 4 hands, which were not so natural as the personal devotee human beings of Sri Ramachandra, having only 2 hands. The personal attendant devotees of Sri Ramachandra, who all are naturally full of humility, so great they are that before I could show my due respect to them, they took hold of me as I had devotional perturbations when I was thinking that on my approach to Vaikuntha, I had to wait at the gate, whereas here at Ayodhya, although I was a stranger, yet as if Sri Ramachandra himself had sent them to take me and to lead me to the main entrance of the Lord's chamber, where I could see Sri Bharat and Shatrugna seated at an adjacent room, surrounded by the attendants such as Sri Sugriva, Angada, Jambavan, and many handsome human beings. At my very sight of them, I mistook Sri Bharata as Sri Ramachandra himself, and accordingly I made my panegyric with uttering appropriate hymns. But at my utterances, Sri Bharata put fingers into his ear holes and time and again repeated, "I am a humble servant only," and also requested me not to address him as such. I, with awe and reverence, just was standing in front of them with my folded palms. At once, Sri Hanuman, who was attending on Sri Ramachandra, came there and forcefully took hold of me and led me to the sanctum sanctorum, where I saw Sri Ramachandra in human form, as brilliantly shining, which I never saw or could imagine after any amount of hearing. Sri Ramachandra was seated on the most precious throne, bedecked with emerald, inside a palace, as if the whole treasure of the universe was preserved there. He was appearing, as it were, the very embodiment of all bliss. He was brilliantly shining as Sri Narayana, and also as the 32 symptoms of a Mahapurusha were manifest on his person. Nay, his excellency in certain respects was surpassing that Sri Narayana himself. He was holding a beautiful bow on his hand and most graciously looking upon his devotees, though he was a king, but kindest at heart for the subjects, and most pleasantly advising them about the observation of one's own varna and ashram dharma, himself being the very embodiment of it. I fell in prostration before him, but over joyous rapture of feeling at his very sight, I entered into a trance. Ah, what an abounding bliss to have a sight of him, but I felt myself deprived of it due to the trance. Anyhow, by his unreserved grace, I got back my normal state and could once again feast my eyes, having the direct vision of him. Still, I was in some spiritual perturbation, but Sri Hanuman left me and in one jump went to the feet of the Lord. Ah, then I could see by the left of the Lord his consort Sri Sita Devi, and to the right of the Lord were Sri Lakshmana, his younger brother, along with other associate devotees of the Lord. Sometimes Sri Hanuman was fanning the Lord with the most charming chamara, white in color, or at times in front of the Lord, he, Sri Hanuman, with folded palms, was making his panegyric with reciting hymns of his own composition. Again, at another time, he was holding a beautiful white umbrella on the top of the head of the Lord. And at times he was attending the feet of the Lord, or sometimes it so happened that with full concentration he was pleasantly rendering different type of service to the Lord, as if he took different manifestations of himself for rendering service to the Lord. With a great ejaculation, I shouted repeatedly, "All glory to him!" when the Lord, with butter-like soft heart, looked graciously upon me and most affectionately comforted me. Sri Bhagavan Ramachandra said, "Bo, Gopakumara, Bo, the dearest sweet-hearted one, happy out of your own love and affection you have come here. I do consider you as my ever-blossomed friend. Now you may comfortably stay here. You need not put obeisance to me." Yet I was paying my obeisance to him, at which he once again addressed me, "Bo, dear friend, get up. May you be blessed. Don't keep in your heart any awe and reverential honor for me. You are my blossomed friend, and I am ever enshrined at your love." Sri Gopakumara said. On the repeated humble request of the Lord, I got up from the bed of the earth, and at once Sri Hanuman forcibly took hold of me and brought me by the side of the Lord. I felt that now, really, I am crowned with my success. Nay, I gained beyond my expectation. Never heretofore I could meet with it. Therefore, I made up my mind not to leave this blissful abode, but I was maintaining all the while myself as Gopakumara in my garment, as well as in my feeling. Anyhow, for quite a pretty long time, I most happily lived there. I was having good opportunity to enjoy the sports of Sri Ramachandra as the King of Kings, and also deeply observing his straightforwardness and strict performance of religious rites as the most ideal emperor. But at Ayodhya, I was deprived of having sight of the most fascinating sports of my beloved Sri Madan Gopala, with his lips on the flute and his other sweet paramour acts, nor I had any hearty embrace into his bosom, nor the kissing of my cheeks by his blissful lips. Therefore a pang of separation from my beloved I extremely felt, and with great melancholy I was spending my days. Anyhow, to some extent I could compose myself at listening to the glories of the lotus feet of Sri Ramachandra from the lips of Sri Hanuman, and at times, by observing myself at his presence, I also tried to teach my mind to see in the person of Sri Ramachandra all the glories, Rupa, Guna, etc., of my beloved Sri Madan Gopal, as ontologically both were the same. But I was carried away in my super excellent absorbing thought to that most blissful land of Vraja, and got myself immersed in perpetuating the transcendental beatific paramour sports and his overflowing bliss thereof. I became extremely perturbed at my longer stay at Ayodhya. Sri Hanuman, the chief among the Sri Ramachandra's ministry, could study the state of my melancholy, and he tried his best to console me by narrating the great glories of Sri Ramachandra. One must be cautioned that this state of melancholy of a devotee has got nothing with worldly sorrows. The devotee is full in his blissful self, yet in its super excellency of characteristic prema, he ever yearns particularly for the devotees of Sri Krishna, the sweetest union with the presiding deity of his heart. Ultimately, Sri Ramachandra himself, who is the omniscient Lord God and extremely kind at heart, most affectionately spoke to me. Bo Gopal Kumara, better you should happily approach Dwaraka. And he instructed Sri Jambavan to take me to Dwaraka. And there ends that chapter.
Beautiful. Thank you. God, I haven't read that for a while. It's so far out. Should I turn the recording off now?
Yeah.